I was in my bedroom, tugging a navy thrift store dress into place, when my daughter appeared in the doorway. I'm Linda Harper. But in that mirror, I was just Mom, while my 18-year-old daughter, Chloe, stared at me, her nose wrinkled. "You're not seriously wearing that, are you? That's like a dress for poor people?" The words burned, but I forced a smile. "It's all I can afford right now." "Honey." Chloe's face went flat. "You're going to embarrass me. This is a donor's gala, not a church basement potluck." My hands were shaking as I walked in. When I walked into the ballroom, heads turned. Chloe saw me, went white, and hit the floor. A few minutes before she hit the floor, everything looked almost normal. On the drive to the hotel, Chloe sat in the passenger seat, smoothing her new dress and checking her lipstick. Tonight matters. "Mom," she said, "these people are donors. I need them to see me as one of them." "I know," I said. "I'm proud of you." She barely smiled. "Please, Mom, don't talk about coupons tonight. Don't tell anyone how we found a deal on my textbooks. Just let me handle the talking." Okay, I shrank in my seat. "Okay," I said. "I'll just smile." The hotel lobby buzzed with laughter. Mothers floated past in dresses, talking about lake houses. Chloe's friend Emma waved from a knot of kids near the check-in table. "You look amazing," she said, then glanced at me. Her smile stuttered. "I told her it's a donor's gala, not Goodwill prom," Chloe muttered, just loud enough for Emma and me to hear. A mother next to them snorted, eyes sliding over my dress like it was something spilled on the carpet. I walked toward the drink table as if nothing had touched me. Later, when Chloe introduced me to another group as my mom, she's between jobs right now. Instead of saying I worked a register, I understood my place. I wasn't a guest at this party. I was something she was trying to hide. As I moved through the crowd, I caught scraps of whispers. "Is she staff?" Someone murmured. "Maybe she's with catering." Heat climbed up my neck. I steered toward the far wall, then ducked into the nearest restroom before my eyes gave me away. Inside, I locked myself in a stall and sat down hard, fists twisted in the cheap navy fabric. At the sink, I forced myself to look in the mirror thrift store dress. Old shoes, hands rough from years of scanning groceries. Chloe's voice echoed in my head, a dress for poor people. Maybe I shouldn't have come. Maybe I should have just sent Chloe alone. I was halfway to the side exit when my phone buzzed. Caller ID Ms. Alvarez. Her message lit the screen. "Mrs. Harper, please don't leave. I need to talk to you before the program starts." I stood there a long second, then turned my back on the exit and slipped quietly toward the ballroom instead. Standing there, with my phone in my hand, I thought about how I'd ended up in that navy dress. My name is Linda Harper. I'm 49, a cashier at the neighborhood grocery store, sometimes filling in at the clinic down the street. I've been a widow almost 10 years, and for just as long. Every decision has come with one question: can I afford this and still take care of Chloe when my husband died? There was no secret insurance policy, just a mortgage, an aging car, and a little girl who still needed braces and school supplies. So I picked up extra shifts, learned every sales cycle, cut cable, gave up coffee runs and dinners out. Vacations disappeared first, then new clothes, anything extra drained away. Whenever there was a tax refund or a little bonus, I didn't buy jewelry. I pushed it into the account I called Chloe's Future, Ridgeview Academy. Her private school wasn't in our budget either, but a guidance counselor mentioned a partial scholarship and payment plan. Chloe's whole face lit up on the campus tour, so I signed the forms and told myself I'd make it work. She learned to speak Ridgeview faster than I did. She rolled her eyes at my coupon binder, begged me not to pick her up in my work uniform, flinched when I pulled out wrinkled cash instead of a card. I kept saying, "She's a teenager. She'll grow out of it." But as she got older, the comments didn't fade. They sharpened. By the night she called my dress for poor people, I understood she wasn't just embarrassed by what I wore. She was embarrassed by who I was. Looking back, the warning signs were there long before the gala. Chloe didn't just criticize what I wore. She tried to smooth out every rough edge that reminded people where we came from. If I laughed too loud, she would nudge me, "Mom, people are staring." If someone asked what I did for work, she'd jump in with, "She's in customer service," laying that phrase over cashier like paint. By junior year, she asked me to drop her off down the street from school. "Traffic's crazy at the front," she said. Staring ahead as we passed the line of shiny SUVs, my dented sedan didn't match the image she was building. Once, when I arrived early for a dentist appointment, I heard her in the courtyard telling a group of girls, "My mom's just not really the gala type. She doesn't get this world." They laughed. I kept walking, pretending I was any other parent in a hurry. A week later, I sat in the bank lobby with the Honors Gala invitation folded in my purse. The words "Parents and key supporters are warmly invited" circled in blue pen. The teller glanced at her screen. "Mrs. Harper, your savings is getting really low. I already knew." Still, I smiled. "I just need to withdraw a little. My daughter has a big night coming up." On the way home, I skipped the mall and went to the thrift store. When my fingers brushed the navy dress on the rack, I thought, "It's simple. It's decent. It will be fine." I told myself the price tag didn't matter. The school had called me a key supporter. I just didn't realize my own daughter didn't see me as one anymore. I hadn't planned to cry in a hotel hallway. My whole plan was simple: don't embarrass Chloe. Don't spill anything before I ever reached the restroom. The gala took one more shot at me. I slipped back into the ballroom, hugging the wall. Chloe stood with a tight circle of Ridgeview kids' shiny hair, smooth laughter, the kind of teenagers who'd never had a card declined. I was halfway toward them, ready to say hello and then disappear to a corner table. When I heard my name, "So your mom's the reason you got to stay after your dad died, right?" a tall girl asked. "Ms. Alvarez said she fought for your tuition." Chloe laughed lightly. "She helped. She said, she's around somewhere. She hates this kind of thing." Another girl glanced past her. "Is that her?" she asked, tipping her chin toward me. The woman in the navy dress Chloe turned, saw me, then spun back so fast her hair moved, color flashed in her cheeks. "Oh, no," she said quickly. "She's probably staff." 2 words, one clean cut. Probably staff. The girls giggled, relieved. The moment slid off them like water. It didn't slide off me. I stopped walking, suddenly unsure whether to keep going or turn around and vanish. I'd spent most of Chloe's life in cheap polos and name tags. I'd never been ashamed of work that kept lights on and food in the fridge. Being erased by my own child was different. I must have made some small sound, because Chloe glanced back again. Our eyes met for half a second. Her smile dropped. "Excuse me," she muttered to her friends, then walked toward me, heels clicking too fast. "Mom," she hissed when she reached me. "What are you doing creeping around like that? Creeping?" I repeated. I was coming to say hello. "Yeah." "Well, don't," she said, eyes flicking over my shoulder. "We just got here. I don't want—" "You don't want what I asked, for them to know who I am." She rolled her eyes. "Can you not do this tonight?" she said. "Please. This is my future. People here matter. Donors, committee members. I can't have you. Have me what I cut in. Stand here in my dress for poor people and ruin your image." Her jaw tightened. "That's not what I said." "It's exactly what you said upstairs," I replied. "And out here. When you told those girls I'm probably staff." Chloe flinched. "You weren't supposed to hear that. I was 10 feet away." I said, "Wearing the same face that's been signing Ridgeview checks." Her eyes flashed. "God, you always do this," she whispered. "You turn everything into drama. I'm just trying not to be the poor kid with the poor mom for one night. Is that really so horrible?" For a moment, I just looked at her, my daughter in the sparkly dress I'd paid off in 3 installments. Standing under chandeliers I'd never stand beneath if it weren't for her. "Is that really how you see me?" I asked. "As something you have to lie about, Hyde?" She crossed her arms. "You're taking it way too personally." She said, "Everybody smooths things over. Emma's dad cuts lawns. but she tells people he's in property services. Nobody wants to stick out. I don't mind sticking out, I said. I mind being erased. She blew out a breath. Will you please not make a scene, she said. I am tired. Mom, I'm tired of always feeling like I have to apologize for how we live. Tonight is important. If you could just blend in for once, that would really help. Blend in. I thought about double shifts, about nights I came home too tired to cook and she ate cereal on the couch, about the winter coat I'd patched instead of replaced so I could send one more payment. All those nights I was gone, I said quietly. All those mornings you got yourself ready because I was already at work. That was me blending in so you didn't have to. Here we go, she muttered. The sacrifice speech. The sacrifice reality. I said, you stand here in a school I can barely afford, in a dress I couldn't pay for in one paycheck, and you're embarrassed that I look like where we actually come from. Guilt flickered across her face, then vanished. Her chin lifted. You chose this, she said. I didn't ask to go to Ridgeview. You pushed it. You wanted this fancy world, so don't throw it in my face now. That went in deep. You're right, I said. I did want this for you. I wanted you to believe you belonged in rooms like this. I swallowed. I just didn't realize that meant pretending I don't belong in them with you. Stop twisting my words, she snapped. I never said I was ashamed of you. I just don't want you turning this into some pity story or telling everyone how we made it here on coupons and prayer. It's embarrassing. Please, just sit. Clap when they call my name. And don't make it weird. She said it like she was asking me not to talk during a movie. Around us, the gala kept humming servers weaving through tables, music soft in the background. To anyone glancing over, we were just a mother and daughter having a small disagreement inside my chest. Something settled. I had always pictured this night ending with Chloe on a stage, catching my eye in the crowd with a look that said every coupon, every overtime shift had been worth it. Instead, my child was asking me to be smaller, quieter, easier to crop out of the picture. I took a breath. You don't have to worry, I said. I'm not going to make a scene. Relief moved across her face. Thank you, she said. Just remember, this is a big night for me. Okay. She turned and walked back to her table, to her safe version of our story where I had some vague office job and plenty of free time. I watched her go, feeling like I'd just been gently pushed out of my own life. The humiliation wasn't loud. It was heavy, wrapping around my shoulders like a coat I couldn't take off. By the time I turned toward the hallway, my eyes were burning. I stared at the carpet as I walked, letting the music fade behind me. In the restroom, the mirror over the sink showed the same navy dress, the same tired face. I was the part that had shifted. Maybe I shouldn't have come. I thought, maybe I should have sent her alone and let her pretend she'd sprung from nowhere. I pressed my palms to the cool edge of the counter and held on until my breathing slowed. Then my phone buzzed. Ms. Alvarez's name lit the screen. Her text was short. Mrs. Harper, please don't leave. I need to talk to you privately before the program starts. I stared at it, the words blurring, and felt something small inside me lift its head instead of following the exit sign. I turned away from the mirror and walked back toward the ballroom, not knowing the next hour would blow Chloe's carefully built image to pieces. Ms. Alvarez found me halfway between the restroom and the exit. Mrs. Harper. Her voice came from behind me, gentle but firm. Do you have a minute? I turned, wiping under my eyes with the side of my finger, hoping I hadn't smudged my makeup too badly. She stood there in her navy blazer with the school crest, a clipboard tucked under her arm, gala badge hanging from a lanyard. I'd seen her 100 times in the Ridgeview office, but I'd never seen her look quite this serious. Of course, I said automatically. Years of parent-teacher conferences will do that to you. She glanced toward the ballroom doors, then back at me. Can we step into the side room for a second? It's a little quieter. I followed her into a small conference room just off the main hallway. Round table, stack of programs, a carafe of coffee gone lukewarm. The muffled hum of the gala floated through the wall, clinking glasses. Polite laughter, the soundtrack of a world I wasn't sure I belonged to. Ms. Alvarez closed the door gently behind us and turned. "I've been looking for you." "Mrs. Harper," she said. "I'm glad you didn't leave. I was thinking about it," I admitted, pretty strongly. She gave a little nod, like that didn't surprise her. I could tell. She said, "You looked overwhelmed when you slipped out earlier." She pulled out a chair and gestured. "Would you sit with me for a moment?" I sat, because my legs were tired and because, somewhere under the embarrassment, I trusted this woman. She'd been the one who called me when Chloe got her first tuition adjustment, who walked me through payment plans and forms I wasn't sure we'd qualify for. "I know you're here for Chloe tonight," she started. "That's the idea," I said. "We'll see how she feels about that." One corner of her mouth lifted. "I've known Chloe for 4 years now," she said. "She's bright, driven, a little too worried about other people's opinions, if you don't mind my saying so, but that's half this school." She pulled a folder from the stack on the table and laid it in front of her. I recognized my own handwriting on the tab. "Harper, Chloe, financial aid. This," she said, tapping it, "is how I know you." I stiffened. "Is there a problem with something I asked? Because if I missed a payment, there's not a problem," she cut in. "There's a record, and it tells a story I'm not sure you see the way we do." She opened the folder. Stacks of forms, copies of checks, notes in her neat handwriting. "When Chloe first applied to Ridgeview," she said, "I remember you coming in after your shift, still in your grocery store polo. You were very clear. We can't do this unless there's help. You told me, and then you said, but if you'll meet me halfway, I'll make every payment on time. I promise." My cheeks warmed. I didn't realize you remembered that specifically." "I do," she said, "because people make promises in this office all the time. Not everyone keeps them. You did, every month, even when your hours got cut one summer, even when your car broke down and you had to ask for a 1-week extension. You came in person to explain and to pay what you could." "That's just what you do," I said slowly. "When you say you'll pay something, you pay it." She smiled faintly. "You'd be amazed how rare that is," she said. "And it wasn't just payments. You signed up to volunteer for every fundraiser we ran, car washes, bake sales, the book fair. You brought food to the teacher appreciation lunch when I knew your grocery budget was already stretched." I shifted in my seat. "It was never enough to cover tuition." I said, "Not really. That's not how we see it." She replied, "We have donors who write big checks once a year and never set foot on campus. And then we have parents like you who show up for the unglamorous parts, the early mornings, the late nights, the events where no one's taking pictures for the school website." She flipped to a page with a spreadsheet. My name showed up in a column labeled Parent Contributions, Hardship Fund. "You also gave small monthly contributions to our emergency fund." She said, $20 here. 15 there. "Do you remember why I blinked? You sent out that email about a student whose dad lost his job," I said slowly. "You said some families might have to withdraw." I thought, if we could spare a little. Maybe it would keep someone else's kid from having to leave the school they loved. Ms. Alvarez nodded. "It did." She said, "More than once, including, indirectly. Your own child, when Chloe's scholarship package needed reworking after one of our donors pulled out. That fund helped cover the gap. The money you put in to help other families came back around when yours needed it." I stared at her. I had no idea. I said, "You never told me that." "We don't always tell people how their kindness moves around," she said, "but we keep track. We know who the quiet supporters are." The phrase echoed in my head, "Key supporters are warmly invited." I'd circled it on the invitation at my kitchen table, not sure if it really meant me. "Why are you telling me all of this tonight?" I asked. She leaned back, studying my face. "Because I saw you in the ballroom," she said. "I saw the way some of the other parents looked at your dress. I saw Chloe trying very hard to blend you into the wallpaper. She didn't say I heard her call you staff, but it hung between us anyway. And because," she went on, "we're doing something a little different this year. She slid another sheet across the table. It was part of the gala program I hadn't really read, the section near the back with small print. My eyes landed on a heading, Special Recognition. Quiet supporters. Every year, Ms. Alvarez said, we recognize major donors, the families with their names on plaques and scholarship funds, but we also wanted to honor the parents whose contributions don't get read aloud but are just as real people who keep their promises, who show up, who make it possible for us to say yes when a kid needs help. I scanned the list, and there it was, near the middle, Linda Harper. My throat closed. You put me on this, I asked. We didn't put you on anything, she said gently. You earned it. The Financial Aid Committee nominated you unanimously. The check that paid for tonight's centerpieces came from a corporation that barely knows our students' names. The reason Chloe is even eligible for tonight's award is because you never missed a payment and picked up every slack rope we ever handed you. Tears pricked my eyes again. But they felt different this time. Hot, yes, but not only from shame. I can't walk up on that stage. I said immediately, not in this dress, not after what she asked. After your daughter tried to distance herself from you in a room you paid for her to stand in, I flinched. The truth always hurt more when someone else said it out loud. She's 18, Ms. Alvarez went on, softer now. She's terrified of being the poor kid. She thinks if she controls the story hard enough, no one will see the cracks. She's wrong. But she's not the only one who has believed that about this place. Are you saying I've been doing the same thing I asked? She tilted her head. I'm saying you've spent years making yourself smaller, so she didn't feel the weight of how hard this was. She said, you've taken on extra shifts, extra guilt, extra silence. For once, the school would like you to take up the space you've already filled. I stared down at my hands, nails short, knuckles dry, a faint white line across one from where a jar had broken at the store last month. Chloe called this a dress for poor people. I whispered. She told me I'd embarrass her. And then in there, my voice shook. She told her friends I was staff. Ms. Alvarez's jaw tightened. I heard part of that. She said, I was on the other side of the room when one of the girls asked who you were. I watched your daughter decide, in real time, whether it was safer to claim you or to push you away. She met my eyes. She made the wrong choice. That's on her, not on your dress. I don't want to humiliate her, I said quickly. Whatever she did, she's still my child, and you're still her mother, Ms. Alvarez replied, which means you are allowed to exist in the same room as her success without hiding in the bathroom. A thin, shaky laugh escaped me. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, she said. It's brave. Brave looks small from the outside. It looks like a woman in a thrift store dress choosing to walk toward the stage instead of out the door. I swallowed. The other parents. I started, then stopped. Some of them will judge, she said. They always do. But they will have to judge you from their seats while you are standing under the lights as someone we chose to honor. The story tonight is not, look at the poor mom in the wrong dress. The story is, this woman quietly kept this place afloat for years, and we finally decided to say thank you. What if I trip, I asked, only half joking. Then you'll get back up, she said, the same way you've been doing for 18 years. We sat in silence for a few moments. The sounds from the ballroom swelled and dipped. I pictured the stage I'd only ever imagined my daughter standing on. You don't have to say anything when you go up, Ms. Alvarez added. Just walk, stand, accept. Let us tell the room who you are. Let your daughter hear it from someone who is not you, not in the heat of an argument, but in front of the people she's so desperate to impress. You really think that will make a difference, I asked. I think she's old enough to feel the sting of realizing the mother she's been ashamed of is the reason she's in that room. Ms. Alvarez said quietly, sometimes kids don't grow up until someone shows them the cost of their comfort. And if that starts tonight, with a little public gratitude, I'm willing to risk the teenage eye rolls. I let out a slow breath. The exit door was still only a few steps away. In my mind, I could see myself slipping out into the parking lot, driving home, hanging the dress back in the closet, telling myself it had all been a misunderstanding. But the image that came after that was Chloe on some future night, telling this story to someone else. My mom left. She was too embarrassed to stay. She always made things awkward. It would become proof in her mind that I didn't belong in her world. Maybe for once, I needed to give her a different story. I don't want to hurt her, I said, but I'm tired of disappearing. So she can feel like she fits. Miss Alvarez smiled, warm and tired, like she'd had this conversation with other mothers before me. You have nothing to be ashamed of, Mrs. Harper, she said. You paid for her seat in that room. Don't let anyone convince you it belongs to someone else. The words landed somewhere deep. I thought of my savings account, thin as the cheap sole in my shoes. I thought of every checkout line I'd stood in to cover registration fees and uniforms. I thought of Chloe practicing her speech in the mirror, never once asking if I wanted to rehearse how to smile when they called her name. Okay, I said finally. My voice was still shaky, but there was something new in it. I'll stay. Good, she said simply. Your table is near the front, second row from the stage. Stay there when the program starts. When you hear your name, just stand up. The rest is our job. She gathered the folder, tucked it back into her stack, and stood. I did too. As she reached for the doorknob, I spoke again. Ms. Alvarez, yes. Thank you, I said, for seeing all of it. She gave a little nod. It's my job, she said, and my privilege. When I stepped back into the hallway, the ballroom doors stood open, spilling light and music into the dim corridor. The exit sign glowed red above the far door, like a dare. I turned my back on it. Then I smoothed the navy dress over my hips, lifted my chin, and walked back into the gala, not as someone sneaking in behind the rich parents, but as someone who, for once, was willing to sit in the seat she had already earned. I slipped back into the ballroom just as the lights dimmed, by some small mercy. Our table was already half full. I didn't have to walk all the way across the room alone. I could slide in from the side, past a cluster of teachers and a stack of programs. My seat second row from the stage. Slightly to the left still had my name tent propped neatly against the bread plate. I eased into the chair and tried not to look toward Chloe's table. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC's voice boomed over the speakers. Welcome to Ridgeview Academy's annual Honors Gala. Polite applause rolled through the room like a soft wave. Silverware clinked, dresses rustled. Someone near the back coughed. Our theme tonight, he continued, is bridges built together, because none of our students have walked this journey alone. Up front, on the big screen, a slideshow of smiling teenagers began to play. I recognized some faces from pickup lines and soccer fields. Chloe's photo flashed past senior portrait, soft lighting, her hair falling just the way she liked it. My breath snagged in my chest for a second, the way it always did when I saw her looking that grown up. The MC talked about academic excellence and future leaders. He thanked the board, the administration, the donors whose names were printed in elegant script at the back of the program. It was the kind of speech I'd heard before Ernest, a little polished, designed to make everyone feel like they were part of something bigger. It didn't usually hurt to listen. Tonight it did. Many of our students, he said, come from comfortable backgrounds, but some don't. Some have families who have scraped and stretched, worked nights and weekends, taken second jobs, made sacrifices most of us will never see, and their children are here tonight not in spite of that, but because of it. The words worked nights and stretched felt like they were aimed straight at my table. I stared at the water glass in front of me, watching the candlelight break into trembling shards on its surface. Across the room, at a long table near the middle, Chloe sat surrounded by kids who looked like they'd been born in blazers. Her dress glittered under the lights, exactly the way she'd wanted it to. She laughed at something a boy said, shoulders loose, posture practiced but relaxed. From where I sat, she looked like she belonged. I wondered if she could feel how close I was, how close the stage was, how close the truth was to catching up. Tonight, the MC said, we celebrate our students, but we also celebrate the people who stood behind them. We've already thanked our major donors, whose generosity keeps the lights on and the programs running. Now we'd like to do something a little different. The slideshow faded to black. A new title appeared on the screen. White letters on a dark blue background, quiet supporters. Loud impact. My heart started to beat harder. I could feel it in my throat, under my ribs, behind my eyes, at Ridgeview. He went on. We believe that support doesn't always come in 5-figure checks. Sometimes it comes in $20 at a time. Sometimes it comes in baked goods and volunteer hours, in rides to practice and late-night homework help after a double shift. Tonight, we want to honor a few of the parents and guardians whose quiet work has made a very loud difference. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some parents straightened in their chairs, perhaps wondering if their names would be called. I sat absolutely still, palms slick against my napkin. We'll be calling these honorees one by one, the MC said. We invite you to stand and join us on stage when you hear your name. He lifted a small card. Our first recipient, he said, is a mother whose file I've seen on my desk many times over the years. A woman who made a promise to this school 4 years ago and kept it every single month. She works hard often, more than one job at once, but still found time to serve on every committee that needed a hand. Her contributions have helped not only her own child, but other students who needed a bridge in a hard season. My stomach dropped. On the screen behind him, a photo appeared me. At last year's car wash, hair yanked into a messy ponytail, Ridgeview t-shirt damp, laughing as a group of 9th graders sprayed each other more than the minivans. This year, he said, Ridgeview Academy proudly recognizes Linda Harper. For a second, the room went blurry. Somewhere to my right, someone started clapping. It spread quickly polite, then warmer. Faces turned, looking for the name that had just been spoken. At the table near the middle, Chloe froze. I saw it happen in stages. The way her spine stiffened, the way her smile faltered, the way the boy next to her nudged her arm and whispered, "Isn't that your mom?" I could almost hear her swallow from where I sat. "Mom," another girl said, eyebrows raised. "That's your last name." Right, Harper. All of this must have taken only a few seconds, but it stretched for me. Long and thin, my chair scraped softly against the carpet as I stood. The navy dress clung to my hips. The shoes I'd worried were too plain felt suddenly very solid under my feet. For the first few steps toward the stage, I looked only at the M, at the bright square of light under his feet. If I let my gaze slide toward Chloe's table, I was afraid my knees would buckle. But then Ms. Alvarez stepped out from the side of the stage, program in hand, and caught my eye. She gave the smallest of nods the kind teachers give right before a student has to speak in class. "You can do this." So I lifted my chin and walked. As I climbed the short set of stairs, the screen behind the MC changed. Another picture of me flashed up, this time at the bake sale, hair still damp from an early shift at the store, holding a tray of chocolate cupcakes. Then another me, stacking chairs after a fundraiser, talking to a teacher with my jacket still on, me in the cafeteria, wearing a visitor's badge, refilling napkin dispensers. "Mrs. Harper," the MC said when I reached him, "on behalf of Ridgeview Academy, we want to thank you for doing it the hard way." Soft laughter rolled through the crowd, the kind that says, "We get it." He nodded toward Miss Alvarez, who stepped forward to the microphone. "When Linda first came into my office," she said, "she told me, 'I can't give you a lot at once, but I won't let you down.' And she didn't. Month after month, payment after payment, shift after shift. When we created our emergency hardship fund to keep students from having to leave the school if their families hit a rough patch, one of the first parents to sign up to contribute whatever she could was Linda. She turned slightly toward me. Because of that fund, we've been able to say yes to kids who might otherwise have had to say goodbye. She looked back out at the crowd, including Chloe Harper, who received a scholarship extension her junior year when things got tight at home. Tonight, When you see Chloe walk across this stage for her own award, remember she's here because her mother refused to break that promise. A little rustle went through the room. The dots weren't hard to connect. Faces turned again toward the table where Chloe sat. I couldn't help it. I looked too. Chloe's friends had pulled back enough for me to see her clearly. Her face was pale under the fancy makeup, eyes wide, mouth parted. She looked like someone had yanked the floor out from under her. "Chloe," Emma whispered at her side. "Is that true?" Chloe's lips moved, but I couldn't hear the words. One of the boys stared from her to the screen, where my picture now showed me holding a mop, laughing with two students in hairnets. "That's your mom," he said. Not unkindly, just stating a fact. Chloe pushed her chair back so fast it shuddered. For a second, I thought she was going to bolt for the door. Instead, she grabbed the edge of the table, knuckles white, the MC's voice, suddenly distant in my ears, said, "Linda, we know you'd rather be behind the scenes than up here, but tonight we want everyone to see the kind of foundation a lot of our students are standing on." He handed me a small glass plaque. It felt absurdly heavy for how thin it was. "Thank you," I managed, my voice only trembling a little, for seeing us. I didn't say more. I didn't look out and announce that my daughter had called this a dress for poor people. I didn't tell the room that she'd claimed I was staff. I just stood there, holding the plaque, while my life played behind me in snapshots. In the corner of my vision, I saw Ms. Alvarez watching me with a slight smile, hands folded. She didn't look surprised that I hadn't given a speech. This was the plan stand. Accept. Let the truth walk itself into the light. It got there faster than either of us expected. A commotion rippled from Chloe's table. Chairs scraped again, sharper this time. Someone gasped. I turned my head fully just in time to see Chloe sway. Her eyes rolled, her face crumpled, and she collapsed sideways, the glittering dress folding under her like water. "Chloe." Emma shrieked. A murmur surged through the room, then rose into a wave of noise. The MC stepped back from the microphone. For a heartbeat, the sound system hissed with silence. Then instinct took over, not just mine. Staff members moved fast, one teacher from the science department, two from athletics, a nurse who'd been working the check-in table. They converged on Chloe as she hit the carpet, catching her before her head could smack too hard. My feet moved without asking me first. I started down the steps, one hand on the rail, halfway there. I stopped. It went against every reflex I had as a mother, every scraped knee, every fever, every late-night nightmare had taught my body move. Pick her up. Hold her. But this was different. There were people there who knew what they were doing medically. The nurse already had 2 fingers on Chloe's wrist. Checking her pulse, someone was loosening the neckline of her dress, laying her gently flat, lifting her legs onto a chair. "Give her space." A teacher called, "Back up, everyone, let her breathe." The crowd rippled backward. From my vantage point on the stairs, I could see Chloe's face, eyes fluttering, lips moving, skin ghost white. I could also see the faces around her friends hovering, shocked, parents craning their necks from across the room, teachers exchanging looks that said, "We'll debrief this later." "Is that her mom?" someone whispered, not bothering to lower their voice much. The one from the stage, "Yes," another murmured, "I think so." Didn't you hear a third added? "Lower." The counselor said the mom helped pay for other kids, too, including her. The words buzzed in the air like flies. I could feel 100 versions of the story starting to form in people's heads. Some would say Chloe was overwhelmed by the moment. Some would say she fainted from embarrassment. Some would frame it as poetic justice. Teenagers, especially, loved a plot twist. I didn't want my daughter to become a punchline in a gossip chain. I also didn't want to sanitize what had just happened. She hadn't fainted from low blood sugar or a surprise pop quiz. She had fainted at the exact moment her curated world crashed into the unedited version of how she'd gotten there. Linda Miss Alvarez's voice was behind me again, calm but urgent. "You okay?" I realized I was still clutching the plaque like a shield, my fingers turning white around its edges. should I begin? Looking toward Chloe. She's in good hands, Ms. Alvarez said quietly. If she doesn't come around in another minute, we'll call paramedics, but I think it's mostly shock. I want to go to her. I said, I also don't want to rush over and make this worse in front of everyone. That's a wise thought. She said, why don't you wait at the edge of the crowd if she calls for you? You'll be right there. Her hand was warm on my elbow as we stepped down the last few stairs together. The MC, to his credit, moved into crisis mode with the ease of a man who'd hosted more than one event full of teenagers. Folks, we're going to take a short pause, he said into the microphone, voice steady. Please remain at your tables and give our staff room to work. If there is a medical professional in the room who is not already here, please make yourself known to the nearest teacher. A woman in a navy dress stood up from a table near the back. I'm an ER nurse. She called, I can help. They waved her over. Someone else was already bringing a glass of water. Another person a cold cloth. I stood a few feet away, just outside the ring of bodies around Chloe. I didn't push forward. I didn't announce who I was. I stood where I could see and hear her, hands shaking slightly, heart pounding. A minute later, she stirred. Sweetheart, the school nurse said softly. Chloe, can you hear me? Chloe's lashes fluttered. She blinked up at the ring of face, confusion etched deep. What happened? She whispered. You fainted, Emma said, voice thick. You just dropped. Chloe's gaze skittered. It landed on Ms. Alvarez, then, slowly, on me. There it was again, that moment of choice, the same one she'd had when the girl asked if I was her mother, the same one in miniature, but now with the whole room watching. Her lips parted. Mom, she croaked, barely audible. It wasn't a plea or a declaration. It was somewhere in between. But it was enough. The nurse looked up. Scanning the crowd, I stepped forward. I'm here, I said. A path opened. People shifted aside to let me through. I knelt down beside Chloe, my knees protesting against the hard floor, the plaque still tucked under my arm. Close up. She looked smaller than she had under the stage lights, less composed, more like the girl who used to crawl into my lap with tangled hair and a scraped elbow. Hey, I said softly. Take a breath. It's okay. Tears welled in her eyes, clinging to the mascara on her lashes. I'm so embarrassed, she whispered. Everyone was looking at you, and then, her voice broke, and then they were looking at me. I brushed a stray strand of hair from her face. Everyone will forget about it by next week. I lied gently. High school moves fast. We both knew it would be a while before this got old as a story, but the room had warmed, just a little. Around us, a few feet away, I heard snippets of conversation. I had no idea her mom did all that. Someone said, guess that dress for poor people is the reason she's even here. Another muttered, not bothering to lower their voice as much as they thought. I pretended not to hear. This wasn't the time to lecture strangers about the difference between being poor in money and poor in character. Can you sit up? The nurse asked. With help. Chloe eased herself into a chair. Her friends hovered, unsure whether to comfort her or give her space. She stared at her hands, at the hem of her expensive dress, at the mother she'd tried so hard to push out of the frame. I didn't know they were going to do that, she whispered to me, voice raw. The thing about you, the pictures, I had no idea. I know, I said. I only found out a few minutes before you did. I've been such a jerk, she blurted. To you, about all of this. It wasn't a full apology, it was a crack in the wall. We can talk about that later, I said, squeezing her fingers. Right now, you need water and maybe some fresh air. She nodded miserably. The nurse gave the okay for her to be walked to the side room. Emma and one of the boys stepped up, ready to help. I stood too. Do you want me to come? I asked quietly, or do you want some space? Her eyes flicked to the still open ballroom, to the crowd pretending not to eavesdrop. Come, she said, just loud enough for me to hear, please. So I walked beside her, not leading, not hiding, just there. As we passed through the tables, I could feel eyes on us, some sympathetic, some curious, some calculating where the line was between tragedy and drama. Let them. They would tell whatever stories they wanted to tell on Monday. The only thing that mattered to me was that my daughter, who had been so afraid of being seen next to her poor mother, was now leaning on my arm, letting me guide her toward a quieter corner, behind us. The program would restart. The MC would find a way to smooth the evening back into its script. There would be more names called, more applause, more photos snapped under the Ridgeview banner. But the real reveal had already happened. The room had seen, in full color, what Ms. Alvarez and a handful of others had known for years, that the woman in the thrift store dress was not an embarrassment to be hidden in the shadows. She was the reason half those kids were standing in the light. I hadn't dragged Chloe's name through the mud. I hadn't picked up a microphone and read out all the petty, cutting things she'd said to me in our kitchen. I had simply let the truth stand where everyone could see it. The rest had taken care of itself. And as the hallway swallowed up the noise from the ballroom, as Chloe sagged against the wall and let me hold the cup of water to her lips, I realized something simple and solid for the first time in a long time. I wasn't the one being exposed. I was just, finally, visible. I wish I could say the rest of the night was a blur. It wasn't. I remember almost every second. The nurse in the side room checked Chloe's blood pressure, her pulse, her blood sugar. She's okay. She told us finally. Dehydrated, probably hasn't eaten much today, and a whole lot of adrenaline. She needs fluids and rest, not a hospital bed. Chloe lay on the vinyl cot with a blanket over her, mascara smudged at the corners of her eyes. She wouldn't quite look at me, but she wouldn't let go of my hand either. Her fingers kept finding mine under the blanket, clenching and relaxing, like she was afraid I'd slip out the door and vanish if she loosened her grip. When we finally walked back through our own front door, it was almost midnight. Chloe went straight to her room without a word. I stood in the dark kitchen for a long minute, the navy dress wrinkled at my waist, the plaque from the stage sitting on the counter like it belonged to someone else. I made tea I never drank. I took off my shoes and left them by the mat. I hung the dress on the back of my closet door and watched it sway, thinking of the words that had been taped to it earlier in the evening, a dress for poor people. Now it was the dress I'd worn when the whole school found out who the poor people really were. For the next day and a half, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Chloe stayed in her room with the door closed, headphones on. I heard the shower run twice, heard drawers opening and closing, heard the soft thump of her falling onto the bed. Every time I walked past, I had to fight the urge to knock, give her space. I told myself, she's not the only one who just had her story ripped open. Her phone buzzed constantly. I only knew because she'd left it on the kitchen table for a few minutes while she grabbed water, and the screen lit up with notification after notification. I didn't read her messages. I'm her mother, not her spy. But I couldn't help seeing the previews flash across the top. Are you okay? Your mom is kind of a legend. Didn't know she worked that hard for you. OMG. Why didn't you tell us about the scholarship stuff? That's actually really cool. Not one of them said what I'd been afraid of for years. I can't believe your mom works at a grocery store. Or you're so embarrassing. Apparently the only person who had thought that was my own daughter. My phone buzzed. 2. Less frequently, but heavier. One text was from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, Mrs. Harper. This is Melissa's mom. Our girls are in AP English together. I just wanted to say thank you. Melissa came home from the gala talking about you, about how hard you've worked, and we had a good long talk about gratitude and what it means. I know tonight was probably hard. I hope you're okay. Another came from a parent I'd only ever traded polite smiles with at pickup. I've been the mom in the thrift store dress, too. She wrote, watching you walk up on that stage made me feel less alone. Just wanted you to know. I set the phone down and covered my face with my hands. I hadn't set out to be anyone's legend. I just wanted to keep my promise and see my kid get a fair shot. Somehow, in the process, my private scramble had turned into a public mirror for other people on the third day after the gala. Chloe finally emerged. I was at the kitchen table with the bills spread out in front of me. Paycheck stub, utility notice, a brochure from the clinic reminding me I was overdue for a physical. She padded in wearing sweatpants and a Ridgeview hoodie, her hair twisted into a messy knot. She looked younger in that moment, closer to the 12-year-old who used to curl up on the couch with me than the almost graduate who had told her friends I was probably staff. "Hey," I said carefully. "Hey," she echoed, voice hoarse. She poured cereal even though it was closer to afternoon, then sat across from me, staring at the swirling loops in her bowl. The kitchen clock ticked between us. "Everyone at school is talking about it." She blurted finally. "About you fainting," I asked, "or about everything else?" "Both," she admitted. "But mostly about you." My eyebrows lifted. "About me," she gave a little humorless huff. Somebody posted a clip from the live stream. She said, "Of Ms. Alvarez talking about the hardship fund, and you at the car wash, and then me dropping like a stone." I winced. "Great. They keep calling you thrift store queen in the comments," she said. I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be an insult or a compliment. "Is that bad?" I asked. She shook her head slowly. "It's not what I expected," she admitted. "They're all like." Imagine being embarrassed of a mom who literally worked 2 jobs so you could go here. And if my mom did half that, I'd tattoo her name on my forehead. She glanced up, eyes shining. "They're making fun of me," she added quietly. "Not you." I let that sit between us for a second. The mother in me wanted to rush in and soothe it away. The part of me that had sobbed in the restroom stall 2 nights ago wanted to say, "Good. Maybe now you know how it feels." What came out was something in between. "Kids can be cruel," I said. "Especially when there's blood in the water. It's not just kids," she said. "Some of the teachers. They keep giving me these looks, like they're proud of you and disappointed in me, and they don't even know the half of it." Silence again. Then, in a voice so small I almost missed it, she said, "You're not going to pull me out of Ridgeview, are you?" My head snapped up. "What I heard you talking on the phone." She rushed on. "To the bank, about the bills, and I don't know. Her throat bobbed. "I know how much it costs. I know I've made it harder, being ungrateful and lying. I don't want to lose everything because I was an idiot." There it was. Not quite a confession. Not quite an apology, but a crack wide enough to see through. I pushed the bills aside and folded my hands on the table. "I'm not going to yank you out of school as punishment," I said. "That wouldn't help anyone. You've worked hard in your classes. You deserve to graduate where you started." She let out a shaky sigh. "Okay. But," I added, "some things are going to change." Her eyes flicked up. "Like what?" "Like the fact that I have been treating your image like another bill to pay," I said. "And I'm done with that." She frowned. "Not quite following. I've gone into overdraft more times than I want to admit, paying for dresses and tickets and trips. You insisted you had to go on so you wouldn't stand out." I went on, keeping my tone calm, not accusatory. "I've worked overtime so you could feel like you weren't the poor kid at the rich school. I thought that was what a good mom did." She opened her mouth, closed it again. "But watching you look me in the eye and tell your friends I was probably staff," I continued, "made something really clear to me. I can live with you being embarrassed by my dress. I cannot live with you being embarrassed by who I am." Her face crumpled. "Just a little, Mom." "Let me finish," I said gently. "We will keep paying what we need to for tuition, for caps and gowns, for things that matter. But the days of me saying yes to every extra so you can impress people who don't even know your middle name, those are over." She swallowed hard. "So, no more. No more dropping hundreds on designer dresses we can't afford," I said. "If you want something more expensive than what I can manage, you're old enough to get a part-time job and pay the difference. No more emergency last-minute fees because you forgot to tell me about an event until the night before. If you want to eat out with friends 3 times a week, that comes from your pocket, not mine." Her eyes filled with tears. Are we "Are we okay?" she whispered. "Or are you saying this because you don't want to be my mom anymore?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Chloe," I said, voice thick, "nothing you do is going to make me stop being your mom. I will always show up. I will always fight for your future. That plaque on the counter doesn't exist without that. But fighting for your future doesn't mean erasing myself." She looked toward the counter, where the glass gleamed softly in the afternoon light. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly, the words tumbling out. "I'm so sorry. Mom, I was terrified of what I asked quietly, of being that kid," she said, "the one everyone knows is on scholarship. The one whose mom can't afford the trips, who never has the right clothes. I thought if I upgraded the story, if I made it sound like you used to do something fancier, if I kept you a little bit away, then maybe they wouldn't see what I pressed. That I don't actually belong there," she whispered. "That I don't have lake house money or Europe trip money or mom bought me a Tesla for graduation money. I thought if I could just get through Ridgeview, get into a good college, get a good job, then I'd pay you back for all of it and it would be like this part never existed. And in the meantime, I asked, what was I supposed to be, a prop you kept just off stage?" The shame on her face was answer enough. I sighed, the anger draining out of me, leaving only tired love. "Chloe," I said, "you belonged at Ridgeview the day you walked in with your backpack half unzipped and your hair in that crooked ponytail. You belonged there because you worked hard and because I did what it took to make it possible. Pretending I was someone else didn't make you belong more. It just made you lonelier." She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I know," she whispered. "Believe me, I know. Do you have any idea how fast my stomach dropped when they said your name, when they put your picture up there, and then when Ms. Alvarez said I got help from the fund you gave to... It was like every lie I'd told about us was suddenly on fire, and then you fainted," I said, a small smile tugging at my mouth despite everything. She huffed out something between a laugh and a sob. I didn't mean to. She said, "I swear, I wasn't trying to be dramatic, it just hit me." "I know," I said. "Your body did what your brain had been avoiding for a long time. It shut down for a minute. Everyone thinks I fainted because I was embarrassed." She said, "Were you?" I asked. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Of what I'd done, of how I'd treated you, of the fact that my friends knew more about your worth in 5 minutes than I'd let myself admit in 4 years. She shook her head. "But after I woke up and you were there and those kids were staring at me like I was the one who should feel small, it was different. I wasn't embarrassed of you anymore. I was embarrassed of me." I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. "Embarrassment can be useful," I said. "If it makes you change, if it doesn't just turn into more hiding." She nodded slowly. "I want to change," she said. "I don't want to be the girl who calls her mom staff. I don't want to be the girl who faints when the truth shows up. I want to be someone who deserves all you've done. You already do." I said, "You're my kid. That's all it ever took. But if you want to start acting like it again, I'd welcome that." We sat there for a moment, hands tangled, cereal forgotten. The weeks that followed weren't magically smooth. There was a cold period, the kind that happens after you've both said big things and your hearts need time to catch up. I didn't slam doors or give her the silent treatment. I did. However, start saying a new word a lot more often. No. I can't afford a spring break trip to Florida for you and your friends. No. I'm not buying another dress for the senior banquet when you have 3 hanging in your closet. No. I'm not signing up to bring 3 trays of catered food to the next fundraiser. I can bake cookies, and that's what I'll bring. Instead of bending over backwards to keep up appearances, I made appointments for me. I went to the doctor for the first full checkup I'd had in years. I let them take my blood pressure, my blood sugar, my cholesterol. When the nurse gently suggested I cut back a little on stress and late-night coffee, I took her seriously. I told my manager at the store I couldn't work the super late shifts anymore, not every week. If I had to pick between an extra $30 and a heart that didn't feel like it was sprinting all the time, I was finally willing to pick me. At first, Chloe didn't quite know what to do with this version of me. "You're not working Saturday?" she asked one morning when she saw me in my pajamas at 8 a.m. "I swapped shifts," I said, pouring coffee. I told them I needed one morning a week that didn't start with a time clock. She nodded slowly. "That's good," she said, and she meant it. I could tell. She got a job. 2. "I'm applying at the coffee shop near school," she announced one afternoon, dropping an application on the table. "They're hiring part-time baristas." Why, I asked. "Curious." "Because I want to go on the senior trip," she said. "And I know what you're going to say if I ask you for the money." "What am I going to say?" I asked. "You're going to say, 'We can cover your cap and gown. We can't cover a week at the beach,'" she replied, mimicking my voice just enough to be teasing, not mocking. "And you'd be right," I said. "So?" She shrugged. "If I want the beach, I can learn to make lattes," I smiled. "That sounds like a solid plan." A month later, I walked past that coffee shop and saw her through the window, hair pulled back, apron on, writing names on cups. She looked content, focused. Not like someone pretending to be something she wasn't, but like someone who had finally found a place to stand that didn't require lying, at school. The story of the gala slowly folded into the larger stack of teenage lore. Other things took its place in the gossip rotation breakups. Sports wins, a teacher who'd shaved his beard. But every now and then, I'd overhear something. "Your mom helped start that fund," right? A girl asked Chloe in the parking lot one day as I waited in the car. "That's seriously awesome." "Yeah," Chloe said. Her voice carried through the open window. She's kind of a badass." I pretended I hadn't heard. Later, when I passed her in the hallway at home, she bumped my shoulder lightly. "You know you're famous." "Right," she said. "Infamous." "Maybe," I replied. She smiled. "Either way, Miss Alvarez says they're keeping the quiet supporters recognition as a regular thing." She said, "You kind of forced them to see what was always there. I didn't force anyone." I said, "I just stood where they pointed. That's what I mean." She said, "You stood in that dress in front of everyone." She paused. "I'm still not crazy about the dress, for the record, but I'm proud of the woman wearing it." I swallowed hard. "Thank you," I said. Our life didn't turn into a fairy tale. The bills still came. The car still made a worrying noise when I turned left too sharply. College applications loomed like storm clouds and brought a whole new set of numbers to worry about. But something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer pouring every last drop of myself into making sure my daughter never felt poor. Instead, I was trying to teach her how to be rich in the ways that mattered: gratitude, honesty, courage. She was learning. So was I. The aftermath of that night at the gala wasn't just my daughter fainting in a room full of donors. It was the long, slow wake-up on the other side for both of us. She woke up to the fact that she'd been standing on a bridge someone else built with their bare hands. I woke up to the fact that I was allowed to step onto that bridge, too. Instead of hiding under it, we were both still a little unsteady, but we were walking it together now, one honest step at a time. By the time spring rolled around, winter had finally stopped clinging to our little rental like a bad habit. The snow had melted into gray puddles along the curb. Crocuses were poking up in the tiny strip of dirt by our mailbox. And on Tuesday and Thursday nights, I was the one keeping the lights on at the community college, not as an employee, as a student. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd be sitting in a basic accounting and bookkeeping class at almost 50, highlighter in hand, I would have laughed you out of my checkout line. But there I was, at a long table under fluorescent lights, listening to a man half my age explain double-entry bookkeeping like it was a magic trick. Debits on the left, credits on the right, assets, liabilities, equity. Words that used to make me feel small now lined up on the page. Suddenly, manageable. I still worked the morning shift at the grocery store 3 days a week. On weekends, I picked up an extra half shift at the clinic's front desk. But 2 nights a week were mine. My name on the attendance sheet. My brain being used for something other than calculating how to stretch 3 chicken breasts into 4 dinners. I sat next to a woman who'd been laid off from her office job and a 20-something guy who wanted to start a landscaping business. We compared notes over burnt coffee from the vending machine. Nobody cared that my shoes were from last year's clearance rack. They cared that I understood how to balance a ledger. That did something to me. Quiet, but real. At home. It showed up in small ways. I still bought my clothes on sale and checked the clearance rack before anything else. But when my favorite black pants finally gave up at the knees, I didn't grab the cheapest replacement I could find and tell myself it was good enough. I took a breath, walked into the store with the decent lighting, and tried on 3 different pairs until I found the ones that actually fit. They weren't designer. They were comfortable. They were mine. I stopped asking, "Will this be okay for Chloe's school things?" and started asking, "Do I feel like myself in this?" My wardrobe didn't become a movie makeover. There was no montage, no dramatic haircut, no reveal. There was just a slow nudge toward clothes that didn't apologize for being on my body. Chloe noticed one Saturday morning. She came into the kitchen after her shift at the cafe, the smell of espresso clinging to her hoodie. She dropped a few crumpled bills and some loose change into a jar on the counter labeled "College" in black marker. "You don't have to put everything in there." I told her, "You're allowed to buy yourself something fun." "I did," she said. "I got a grilled cheese on my break." She nudged the jar. "The rest is for future me." "And, past you?" "Past me?" I asked. "The one who paid for all the stuff I took for granted," she said, eyes sliding away. I figure she deserves some help now. We'd stopped dancing around words like poor and scholarship. Instead, we hacked at them with bad jokes and honest sentences, trying to take their power back. At Ridgeview, the gala had gradually turned into a story seniors told the juniors. Remember when Chloe fainted at Quiet Supporters and her mom turned out to be the MVP, a girl said once when she thought I was out of earshot? Yeah. And now Miss Harper is basically the reason they started those parent recognition things. Another replied, "My mom says they're going to do it every year." Chloe rolled her eyes when she relayed it to me later. "You've become a tradition," she said. "You and your thrift store empire." I smirked. "I'll add that to my resume." We talked more now about real things, not just due dates and pickup times. One evening, we sat at the kitchen table with 3 college brochures between us, the community college where I took my night classes, a state university 2 hours away, and a private 4-year school that made my savings account break out in hives. "I still want to aim high," Chloe said, tapping the private school's glossy view book. "But I don't want you paying for a name on a sweatshirt we can't afford." "That's a good start," I said, surprised and proud at the same time. "What's your actual plan?" She took a breath. "Okay, if I stay in state, I can live at home for 2 years and knock out my basics at the community college. My counselor says the credits transfer. I can work at the cafe part-time, maybe pick up tutoring if I get a solid GPA. Then I transfer to state for the last 2 years. We share the cost, me with loans and work study, you with what you can do without skipping your own doctor appointments." I blinked. "You've been thinking about this." "Kind of nonstop," she admitted. I don't want my future to be built on you breaking yourself." I stared at the brochures. At 18, I'd barely thought past the next paycheck. She was mapping out 4 years. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fully funded. But it was grounded in something I recognized reality. That seems doable. I said, hard, but doable. "The private school has a great program," she said wistfully, touching the edge of the glossy catalog. "But when I look at the cost, I just hear your voice in my head, I can't afford that, and I won't go broke to pretend I can. I laughed. At least something I say sticks. More often now. I heard my own words echoing back to me. When Chloe's friends talked about flying to Mexico after graduation, she didn't come home and beg. They're going, she told me, stirring sugar into her coffee. I'm happy for them, but that's not my budget. I'll probably work extra hours and maybe take you to dinner instead. Me, I asked. You're going to spend your wild senior summer taking your mom to Applebee's, hey, she said, bumping my shoulder. Don't knock Applebee's half-price appetizers after 9. That's generational wealth. We both laughed, and it didn't have the sharp edge it might have had a year ago. The biggest change, though, was sneakier, one afternoon, a few weeks before prom. Chloe walked into the living room where I was sorting laundry. She held up a flyer. Prom dress sale at the mall this weekend. She said, they're doing a big event. Fittings, makeup, the works. I braced myself. Sounds fun, I said carefully. She sat down across from me, chewing on her lip. I'm going, she said, but I want you to come with me. My eyebrows shot up. You do? Yeah, she said, because I want you to get a dress, too. I blinked. Chloe, I'm not going to prom. Not for prom, she said quickly. For you, for life, for whatever's next. You've been wearing the same 3 things on rotation to every nice thing we have, and I'm not saying they're bad, she added fast. Hands up. I'm just saying, you deserve something that makes you feel good, not just good enough to hide in a corner. The words were so close to the ones she'd once used in the opposite direction that my throat went tight. Are you trying to make amends? Or are you just tired of seeing me in the Navy special? I asked, half teasing. Both, she admitted, but mostly the first one, at the mall. The prom shop was chaos girls twirling in mirrors, moms hovering with purses and opinions, salespeople darting in and out like bees. Chloe grabbed 3 dresses to try on, then turned to me. Your turn, she unsaid, shoving a hanger at me. Pick something. No price tags first. Just what you like. That's not how my brain works, I protested. My brain sees price tags like oxygen levels. Just this once, she said. We can talk numbers later. Right now. Pretend we're rich. I snorted. We are rich, just not in the way these stores measure. She rolled her eyes. You know what I mean, against every instinct I had. I let myself browse with my hands instead of my calculator. My fingers trailed over fabrics, some cheap and scratchy, some soft. I looked at colors I'd always told myself weren't for me. Red, emerald, a deep, warm plum. In the end, I picked a simple dress in that plum color. It wasn't flashy. It didn't scream for attention. But when I slipped it on and stepped out of the fitting room, Chloe's breath actually caught. Mom, she said, you look beautiful. I turned in front of the mirror. The dress skimmed over the parts of me I'd spent years wanting to hide and settled gently on the parts I'd earned softness. Curves, lines formed by time. It's too much, I started to say. It's not enough, she cut in. But it's a start. At the register. The number that popped up made my stomach clench. It wasn't outrageous, but it wasn't nothing. Before I could pull my wallet all the way out, Chloe slid her own card across the counter. Chloe, I protested, you don't have to. I know, she said. That's why I want to. You've bought me 100 dresses to keep me from feeling poor. Let me buy you one so you can feel seen. The cashier pretended not to listen, but her eyes softened. I'll cover half. I compromised. Non-negotiable. Partnerships only in this family now. She grinned. Deal. We walked out of the mall with 2 dresses and garment bags. Hers sparkled. Mine didn't. I liked that. The house felt different when we brought them home. We still lived in the same small place, with its creaky steps and thin walls, but the conversations that filled it had changed. We spent more evenings at the table with laptops and forms spread out FAFSA applications, scholarship essays, my own textbook open to a chapter on budgeting. We talked about interest rates and work-study programs, about the difference between good debt and throwing money into a hole you'd never climb out of. Sometimes we argued. There were nights Chloe accused me of being too cautious, of letting fear make decisions for me. There were mornings I snapped and told her I wasn't her personal ATM or guilt sponge, but underneath it all, there was a shared understanding that hadn't existed before we were on the same team. I said no more often, and I didn't apologize for it. No, I can't co-sign a car loan right now. I said when she floated the idea of buying a used sedan for college, if you want a car, you're going to have to build that credit yourself, slow and steady. No, I'm not skipping my doctor appointments so you can have a nicer apartment freshman year. I like my organs functioning. Thanks. She rolled her eyes, but there was affection in it. You're really leaning into this whole I matter too thing, she said once, half exasperated, half impressed. I am, I said. Turns out, I've been pretty bad at it for a long time. I'm trying to catch up. There were wins, too. Chloe's manager at the cafe promoted her to shift lead. The extra $1 an hour made her giddy. One step closer to not needing to ask you for gas money, she said, waving her new badge. I passed my bookkeeping class with an A. When I showed Chloe the grade log on my online portal, she whooped so loudly the downstairs neighbor banged on the ceiling. Sorry, she yelled back, then yanked me into a hug. Look at you, nerd. I swatted her with the nearest dish towel. Takes one to know one. On the night of the senior awards ceremony, Chloe insisted I wear the plum dress. I thought this was for life, not just school things. I teased. This is life, she said. This is both of us. Walking into a room we earned the right to be in. We stood side by side in the bathroom mirror, her in her simple blue dress, hair curled, me adjusting the neckline of mine, for the first time. I didn't see a before and after picture, no then and now. No side-by-side comparison of what had been broken and what had been fixed. I saw two women in different stages of their stories, both trying, at the ceremony. There were no fainting spells, no surprise plaques, just names and applause and a few too long speeches. When they called Chloe up for her academic award, she walked across the stage with her head high. She didn't glance nervously at her friends. She looked straight toward where I sat, afterward, in the crowded hallway. One of her classmates' mothers approached me. "You must be Chloe's mom," she said. "I've heard a lot about you." I tensed automatically, old habits gripping my spine. Good things, I hope. I managed. She smiled. "My son says you're the reason he applied for financial aid," she said. He thought kids like him didn't have a chance until he heard what Ms. Alvarez said about you at the gala. So, thank you for letting them tell your story. It's helped more than you know. For a moment, the noise around us faded. "You're welcome," I said. And this time the words didn't feel like something I had to earn. They felt natural on the car ride home. Chloe kicked off her shoes and curled her feet up on the seat, careful not to wrinkle her dress. "Do you ever wish," she asked suddenly, "that we'd been, I don't know, richer?" I thought about it, about how much easier some things would have been, about how many fights we might have skipped, about how many nights I might have slept better. Sometimes, I said honestly. When the bills pile up, when my back hurts after a long shift, when I see other moms buy things without checking their bank apps first. She nodded. "Me too," she said. "Like when I see pictures from other kids' vacations, or when they talk about their parents paying for everything. It'd be nice not to worry." We drove a few more blocks in silence. Streetlights slid across the dashboard. But then I think about other stuff. She went on. Like, if I'd never worried about money, I might never have thought twice about putting that dress on your card, or lying about what you do, or what kind of person I was becoming. I was so focused on looking like I belonged that I never asked if I was acting like someone who deserved what you gave me. I glanced over. Her profile was serious, not self-pitying, and now I asked, "Now," she said slowly. "Success doesn't look like walking into a fancy room and pretending we're like everyone else. It looks like being able to tell the truth about how we got there, about who carried what, about who we had to thank." She smiled wryly. Besides, she added, I kind of like knowing the value of $10. Some people at school think $10 is tip money, not 2 hours of wiping tables. I laughed. You sound like me. I'm okay with that, she said, at home. I hung the plum dress carefully back in my closet. It didn't feel like armor or camouflage. It felt like just a dress. One I liked. That was enough. In the living room. The glass plaque from the gala had migrated from the counter to a small shelf. Next to it, Chloe had stuck a photo of the two of us at the coffee shop, both in aprons, flower on my nose, foam on hers. Someone had written on the bottom in black pen, "Rich in what matters." I didn't frame it. I didn't need to. It was already framed by everything it had taken to get there. Our bank account was still thin. Our future was still a patchwork of plans and maybes. But when I thought about the night in the kitchen when Chloe had called my dress for poor people, it felt like it belonged to another lifetime. We hadn't become rich. We'd just stopped being ashamed of being the ones who knew what sacrifice actually looked like. If there was a new beginning anywhere in all of this, it wasn't in a dress or a plaque or even a scholarship letter. It was in the moment both of us stopped measuring our worth by how expensive the room was we were standing in and started measuring it by how honestly we could stand there together. I used to think being poor meant exactly what the numbers on my bank app said. Negative balance. Poor, coupons spread out on the table, poor, thrift store, dress, definitely poor. It took a crowded ballroom and my own daughter hitting the floor for me to understand there's a bigger gap than the one between incomes. There's the gap between people who have less money and people who have less character. You can hide an empty savings account for a while. You can't hide who stayed up late filling out the forms, who took the extra shift, who skipped the vacation and the new coat and the nicer car so the kid could sit in a chair with a school logo printed on the back. Kids get embarrassed about uniforms, about lunches, about the cars that pick them up. They roll their eyes at work boots and name tags and hands that smell like fryer oil or bleach. I've watched them. But the thing about the truth is, it's patient. It waits. And eventually, no matter how hard you try to spin the story, it shows up in the fine print and the photo slideshows, in who the counselor calls up on stage, in who the room claps for when nobody is selling anything. The dress I wore that night was cheap. The sacrifices that paid for it weren't. I don't need anyone to put that on a plaque. A few weeks after the gala, I went back to Ridgeview for a smaller event. Nothing fancy, just a senior project night. I was standing by the coffee urn, holding a foam cup, when one of Chloe's teachers walked over. "Is your mom here?" she asked. Chloe didn't flinch. She reached out, curled her fingers lightly around my elbow, and said, clear enough for the kids at the next table to hear, "This is my mom, Linda. I wouldn't be here without her." No spotlight, no microphone, no fainting, just that sentence. For a long time. I chased a version of success where nobody could tell we were scraping by. Now, I'm building a different one where my daughter doesn't have to lie about the hands that built her bridge. And for the first time, I don't feel poor at all. If you ever felt ashamed of your parents' poor clothes or old car, ask yourself what they were giving up so you didn't go without. If this story hits close to home, hit like, share it with someone who needs it, and tell me one sacrifice your parents made you see clearly now.